We've done rookies, we've done second-year players, so of course that means we are doing third-year players. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and no run! I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. From now through to September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com right now to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. So hit that thumb and subscribe. And long term, we want to hit that 100,000K sub mark on YouTube. That'd be great. You could do that and hit it on Spotify and leave comments and 5 stars and all that sort of stuff. So over the last couple of days, we did a rookie preview show. We did a second-year player show. And now, of course, we're doing a third-year player show. I'm not going to do a fourth-year player show. I think that's going... I have done in the past, but I didn't do it the last couple of years, and I don't really know there's that much to take out of that, but whatever. We'll cover all those players in team previews coming up. We're also going to do some positional tier stuff next week too. Statistical correlations, last round, categorical flyers, all that sort of stuff is coming up. Yes, more mock drafts. Yes, it's coming. ESPN points mock draft will come soon, probably next week too. Okay, so we're talking third-year players. You can label them breakouts, whatever. Like, they're just players in their third year. And we've looked at the data of how many rookies finish in certain spots and second-year players and the difference between first to second year. And now we'll look at the difference between second to third and first, second to third and see how that changes. In the past, it used to be that third year was big steps forward. Right? We'd get a lot of these guys really taking steps forward. I think, and you'll see in this data here, it's starting to move a little bit towards where the big jump comes year 1 to 2. Year 2 to 3, we do get improvement, but it's probably not quite that big jump that we've had from year 1 to year 2 in recent years, which is a little bit of a change from the way that it has been running. So let's just take a look at some of this data to start things off. Did you say data or data? Anyway, so if we look at the 2020-2021 season, the third-year players from that year, there was 15 top 120 players. There was 15 points and in categories. There was 5 top 50 category league players. There was 4 top 50 points league players, 8 Yahoo points top 100 guys, and 12 category top 100 players. That is the third-year players back in the 2020-2021 NBA season. That's a decent chunk. Yes, that's a decent chunk. If we look at the next season, and we covered these guys yesterday in their year 2 season, but we're looking at the 2021-2022 season, the year 3 players. And you'll see here that if you compare that to what they were in year 2, we had 9 top 120 points league guys in year 2 and then 9 in year 3. We had 7 top 120 category guys in year 2 and 7 in year 3. The high-end stuff changed. Top 50 points, 1 to 3. Top 50 categories, 1 to 2. Yeah, so look, there were improvements there. 6 to 8 in the top 100 points and 4 to 6 in the category zone. But the overall mix of players was still similar. We just got more players sort of graduating into the top end of production. If we go to the next group, where we're looking at the 2022-2023 season, the players in year 3 here, these are the LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton year. And as you'll see, like we've researched the data all the way through. There was 0 top 50 points league guys as rookies, 3 as second year players, 3 or 4 as second year guys, as third year guys. And the top 100 goes 3 in year 1, 8 year 2, 9 in year 3. So between year 2 and year 3, not a lot happening. Again, we look back at that 2020-2021 where it was big jumps between year 2 and year 3. More recent times, it hasn't quite been as much. Let's look at the next group. We're looking at the 2023-2024 seasons. This was last year's batch. They went from 0 top 50 players as rookies through to 3 as third-year players. The back-end guys did improve a bit, so 5 top 120 category league guys as rookies to 8 as second-year players to 12 as third-year players, and points league went 6, 7, and 11. So a little bit more bending towards that that improvement of those guys. This is the Cade, Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, Evan Mobley group of players. So again, we see that slow as rookies, nice solid jump into year 2, and a little bit more of a jump in year 3 from those guys. And that brings us to talk about this batch of players in the 24-25 season who are going to be third-year guys. Now, remembering that this draft class, I believe, was a relatively weak one, and it was robbed of having Chet Holmgren in it because he missed the entire season. So we're talking Paolo, we're talking Jabari Smith, we're talking the Bronco, Jalen Williams, those sort of players, Jaden Ivey, Keegan Murray in that group. This is the bunch of players we're talking about. So if we have a look at how Yahoo projects these guys out in ESPN and how I project them out and sort of see where they sit. If we look at Yahoo's rankings, they've got 8 top 120 players. Their ADP has 7 top 120 players. ESPN's rank, I said wrote rank twice, so it's one's rank, one's ADP. They've got 7 top 120 guys. I've got 9 top 120 projected points league players for this group of players and 7 top 120 category league players, which again is not that different to a lot of year 2 sort of grouping. So when I'm not expecting a gigantic leap forward, what I do have is a group of about 15 or 16 players in year 3 who I think are perhaps draftable, but 7 or 8 of those are last round flyers. I don't really know what they're going to do, and their path to becoming really strong players isn't there. So it's a little bit of a weaker group when we talk about the current group of second year players, the Wembys and Men's and Scoots and Millers, when they head into year 3 and 25-26, I think we're going to be looking at 10, 12, top 100, top 120 type players. And that's where relative draft strengths and weaknesses in a class has sort of carried through, I believe, here in terms of where these valuations of these players are. So that's where we sit with the history of third-year players, the improvements that we see, and as time has gone on, I just think there's been less of that year 2 to year 3 jump, or the data shows that as well. Where in the past we used to get a lot more of that, and not to say that these guys aren't taking steps forward, because what you will see is more of the guys who were solid enough, just taking incremental steps forward, or maybe big steps forward in some cases, but not necessarily players coming from nowhere and becoming awesome. That's less likely to happen. We're going to go through those 9 players that I think are top 120 points league guys and the category mix, and then talk through the other names as well. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. We've talked about FanDuel. They've been supporting the show for an incredibly long time, and that's great. We love that they've been doing that. And now we're going to bring something different from America's #1 sportsbook. All customers at FanDuel, if you place a $5 bet, you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket if you do it anytime from now through to September the 22nd, 2024. All you need is that YouTube TV base plan, and then you're able to watch all NFL out-of-market Sunday afternoon games through YouTube and YouTube TV. You need the Google account. You need a valid form of payment on there, but you can go in and cancel that at any time. But that's 3 weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket. So if you don't have NFL Sunday Ticket, this is an easy way to get it just by placing a $5 bet. And you might say that's cost $5. Yes, but you could also use that bet and you could win it. It's $5, 3 weeks, NFL Sunday Ticket. So go to FanDuel.com right now and download America's #1 sportsbook, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, so let's get in here and talk about the guys who are the third-year players for this upcoming season. We are going to start with the guy that was the #1 pick in that draft, and that, of course, is the big fella in Orlando, Paolo Banchero, whose name is controversial in fantasy circles because there'll be, and I will continue to bang on and on and on about this, the way that traditional ranking sites, they are rooted in season-long roto, I never know, like framework, and 5% of fantasy players play that. So when we say, well, Paolo's not even a top 100 guy in 9-cat rankings and he's 140th, so I wouldn't draft him, he'd hurt my tip. That's just a bad way, I think, of viewing what he produces. Now, there is a huge distinction between Paolo's points league value and his category league value. I don't think there's any debate about any of that stuff. But this is where you're getting the value out of Paolo becomes interesting, because Yahoo puts out their ranks and their ADP follows that rank. But it's a mix between the two of categories and points leagues. So he's ranked 37 on Yahoo and the 34 ADP. For a points league, that's actually a steal. He's probably 10 to 12 spots better than that. For a category league, it's probably too high. Like, he averaged 22.5 points last season. He averaged 7 rebounds, 5.5 assists, a Julius Randle-esque 0.9 steals and 0.6 blocks, with 46 and 73 from his field goals and free throws, which isn't strong at all. We know that for a category league perspective. But getting volume, points, rebounds, assists is still useful. Those percentages aren't unrecoverable from. He's heading into year 3, and one of the things that does improve a lot for players is cut down on turnovers, improvement in assists, and improvement in percentages. They are the common things that improve. You don't really see rebounds change that much. You don't really see blocks or steals change on a consistent level. Points and usage will rise. Percentages will rise. Assist rate will rise, usually, as we get further into a player's career, especially if they're a top-level player. And Paolo is that. He may be getting overrated at times. But whatever. That's fine. In terms of where you draft him, if you're in a points league, totally reasonable to consider him as a round 2 player. I wouldn't do round 2 or round 3 in category leagues. If you talk to Kingy, he's going to pick him in round 3, but he's got a different perspective on that, and that's okay. You can build your team in certain different ways. I'm not going to tell you that picking him in round 3 is the right thing. I'm also not going to tell you that it can't work, because it can. But if I'm going to look at things from a holistic point of view, there's different ways to approach that. I think he's more of a round 5, round 6 category league player. Like last season, he was fine. He had 30 usage. He shot 34 from 3. He does turn it over. The percentages are a problem. He ranked 63rd last year in -1 rankings. He was 31st in Yahoo points with 40 points. I do think he steps it up. That's where he looked like he was already 31st last year in Yahoo points, and his ranking is at 37. So you're already getting half a round value there, and that's not baking in any level of improvement, which I think is going to come. And the next guy is going to be the player I think that probably improves, maybe not the most, but of the top end guys, probably the most. And that is, of course, the Bronco, Jalen Williams. The beginning of last season for Williams was undoubtedly slow. We talk a lot. Well, I talk, and some of you listen, and some of you argue, and whatever you want to do with it. We talk about the variability, the volatility of low-volume stats, in particular steals. And he had the most steals in the NBA in the second half of his rookie season. And then last season, he averaged 1.1 and was barely getting a steal to begin the year. Now, that did start to pick up as the season went on. He shot 43%, Jalen Williams again from 3, which is super strong. He had 24 usage. He ranked 56th in category leagues and 60th in points leagues. But the difference here is that this is what is year 3. Oh, yeah, year 3 for Jalen Williams. But he moves into a very clear number 2 usage player. Josh Giddey was a 2021 usage guy. Williams is going to have to step up from 24 to 26, probably in usage, maybe 27. He's going to have to do more playmaking because Shai's fine as a passer, but Giddey did so much of that. So Williams is going to have to do more of this. And that is a great recipe for improvement. He's ranked 43 on Yahoo with an ADP of 44. I actually think that's too low. I think he probably is a round 3 player. That's where I'd be looking at him in category leagues and in points leagues. I just think we are going to see 19 points with 1.5 threes and 4 rebounds last year. Part of the reason why there's a lot of frothing of the Bronco is because of the elite percentages. 54 from the field, 81 from the line. I do think that he is in the prime spot to have a significant field goal percentage decrease. Why is that? I think he takes more threes, which inherently brings your field goals down. If he shoots worse from 3 than 43%, it brings it down further. And if he is tasked with a larger offensive load, that is harder to keep that efficiency. You might think that's me being a negative towards Jalen. It's not. It's more me illustrating that I think he's going to get more of the counting stats. I don't think he's going to sit at 4.5 assists and 19 points. He's going to jump up there. And that usually means there's a decrease in some efficiency stuff. So we saw that he was a better category than points league player last year. I think that gap narrows, and he probably sits as a strong third-round guy in either format for this season. Big opportunity, year 3 growth, more usage, more ball handling, watch for a decrease in percentages, and if we're going to talk about the volatility of steals, him being the league leader as a rookie in that second half, and they came way down, well, volatility works both ways. I'm not saying he's jumping up to 1.6. You don't want to bank on that, but it's very, very possible. I doubt he's going lower than where he is. It's very possible that pushes up. The thing you'd have to watch is maybe like his blocks were okay, but his rebounds weren't solid, but he's probably going to play less at the 4. more at the 3, I'm guessing, if we get more Hartenstein and Chet crossovers. So maybe that impacts some of the efficiency stuff as well. Just keep an eye on that. The next third-year player we look at is the passport legend himself, Jalen Duren, who is a guy that is or does or should have a really strong, tailored fantasy game. He was 60th in head-to-head leagues last season and 67th in points, averaging 33. He's at 51 this year on Yahoo with 54 as an ADP. I think he's around 5 to 7 guy. So maybe that rank is marginally high, but it's not bad. He was terrible defensively. Terrible. Now, when we talked to Kuka on here from Locked On Pistons about Duren, I asked the question, like, how full committed are they to him, especially given he can't shoot? Especially given that Isaiah Stewart is not playing any power forward this season, really. So could we see Duren come back a little bit and we get more of Stewart at center? He did not think that was going to happen and that they would commit to Duren at 30 plus. I am not fully convinced that'll be the case because, again, Duren sucks on defense and he can't shoot. And if you're going to have Asar and you're going to provide more space for Cade and you're going to have Ron Holland, having a center who can shoot a little bit, what's the defensive trade-off between Duren and Stewart? Probably nothing. That's where we get a little interesting. So, Jalen Duren, 0.8 blocks and 0.5 steals, they are Julius Randle numbers. That's horrendous. He's an unbelievable rebounder, one of the best in the league. He's a good field goal percentage player, never takes threes. He improved his free throws a ton. He's a pretty good passer. I am marginally worried about the upside value of him because there is that risk to me of that lack of shooting, the lack of defense, meaning that maybe they pull the minutes back slightly. Just a slight pullback. The other center that went in that lottery range in that draft was the big fella, Mark Williams. He had whatever was wrong with his back. They may have ended up announcing it, but it was too late. I stopped caring because they obviously lied about so many things about that back or a lot of omissions about Mark Williams' back injury. He barely played last season. What I'm finding really interesting is that Williams' ADP sits at 72. He's ranked 68, which is basically bang on where he was last year. No one is penalizing him draft-wise or ranking-wise for his injury, where he missed more games than LaMelo Ball. And I know that LaMelo has been injured for 2 years in a row now with the ankle, but it is interesting that he just does not get and Jalen Duren sprained his ankle 3 times last year as well. Williams is not being penalized at all. He is not sliding in drafts because of this back injury, which I'm finding interesting. I've got no problem with it. Taking him round 7, round 8 is fine. He's never going to be a high usage scorer, but he can block some shots. And him at 1.1 is actually not that high. It's better than Duren, but I think that can improve. He's a good rebounder. He's a solid free throw shooter. He's a good field goal guy. He's a typical big man. A lower usage scorer with rebounds and field goal percentage and hopefully with some more blocks. Not much else going on there. And we know that there are certain spots in the draft where centers run off. And he's sort of smack bang in the middle between the early run and the late run. Hopefully he stays healthy. Hopefully we get a full season of him starting because we haven't got that yet. And we get some steps up from the big fella Mark Williams. Able to really sort of establish himself as that center. And obviously Charlotte had the opportunity to draft Donovan Clingan at pick 6. Not that I think Clingan is the savior to franchise or anything like that. But they passed. They took a Tishan Solin, who I don't think is going to play a huge amount this season. But they seem more committed to Mark Williams being that guy, which is when we're looking at minute stability, that's an interesting thing. The number 3 pick in that draft back in 2021? What year was it? 2022. 2022 draft. Is that right? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Jabari Smith ended up going at pick number 3 in that draft. He played decent minutes as a rookie, really bad efficiency-wise and struggled with some defensive stats. He improved significantly last season. It went a little bit under the radar. He was 103rd in -1 and 97th in points leagues. Yahoo's ADPs push him up to 79. That is getting a little rich for me, but I don't mind him as an 8th round player or a 9th round player. He averaged almost 14 points with 8 rebounds, but for a guy that came out of college with really high steal rates and really high block rates, they have not translated at all. 0.7 steals and 0.8 blocks. Low usage, and that's not really going to change in Houston this season. He shot 36 on threes and 81 from the line. Fantastic. 45 overall means he needs more 2-point shooting numbers, and another part of the reason why I think we should really be getting rid of field goal percentage as a category, but it's just never going to happen. Smith is, again, primed, year 3, take some steps forward. It just is hard to find where that happens. Does he take usage off Van Vliet, Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün? The answer is no to any of those players. Incremental, like 17.6 usage last season. Does it go to 19? Maybe. Where we need Jabari to step up is, instead of 0.8 blocks, it's 1.3. I don't know that he does that, but that's where he needs to improve to take that step forward. And you're getting a bit of a pattern here with these guys that a lot of them are in those solid roles. I can see small improvements. Probably the biggest so far would be Jalen Williams, but everyone else with relatively small improvements, sort of sitting in that same zone, just marginal increases, haven't established themselves as true superstars. Just some small improvements perhaps coming, and I think that's sort of where not where we sit with them, but the current, I guess, assessment on those players. Let's take a look at the next guy in just a second, because that's probably your major contributors. There's one guy that we haven't got to yet, but which people will have in different spots. But I do want to talk. I want to go to San Antonio, and I want to talk about point guard legend Jeremy Sohan. It was obviously people making a lot of jokes about Sohan and the point guard experiment last season, and basically writing him off as a player. It didn't go super well, obviously, as a point guard, but I thought overall his season was okay. He averaged almost 27 fantasy points. He was top 150 in categories and top 125 in points. But Yahoo's got him just like way worse. 185th ranked this season and 147 ADP. Are they worried that Castle's going to start over him? Are they worried that Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes are going to start over Sohan? I'm not. He averaged 12, 6.5, and 3.5. And yeah, those assists might come down with Chris Paul there. He shot 31 from 3. He got up to 77% from the line, 44 overall. Now, that 18, 19% usage will probably stick. But if he jumped to 48% shooting, I actually wouldn't be shocked at that. And another one, like bad defensive stats. He should be a 1.3 steals, 0.8 blocks player. If there's any one of these guys that could take a sort of out of nowhere leap, it is Sohan. 44% to 48, possible. Double your steal rate, actually possible. Double your block rate, also actually possible. Not likely, but possible. And I do think that, like, again, he was sort of like, you're not a point guard. But I thought he was all right in the other role. He was solid enough. And to me, that's just, again, when you're pushing him, when he ranked 124th in points leagues and he's ranked at 185, which is borderline 16 team, that's someone I will take a crack at. Like, I've got him about as a round 10, round 11 sort of a player. I think that's about the right spot for him. But I think maybe there's a little bit of the memification of whatever happened with the Spurs in his season last year. Keegan Murray was that player that really people love from this draft class. I have some concerns overall about Keegan and where his role sits this season, mainly because they bring in DeMar DeRozan, so Keegan has no real shot to be able to step up into a larger offensive role. Fox, Sabonis, DeRozan. And then when Malik Monk's on the court, Keegan is going to be a 15% usage player. He improved a lot as an on-court defensive impact guy. He played 34 minutes, but still only 18 usage. He averaged 15 and 5. He never gets assists. He had 1 steal and 0.8 blocks. He shot 45 from the field, and his three-point shooting, which was a lead as a rookie on very low attempts, as he scaled up, it came back down. Last season, Keegan, he never turns the ball over, but remember, he also never scores and he never gets assists, which are inextricably tied together. He was 96th in -1 category, 101 in points league value. His ADP is at 75 and his rank is 71. I think that's too high. I think that you can look at him as a round 7-ish player for categories, but in points leagues, it's probably round 9 for me. I don't see the clear path for Keegan averaging more than the 29 fantasy points he averaged last season. How does he do it? We know the number one thing for fantasy points is minutes. He already played 34. That's not really changing. The second thing is usage, and that's probably going down. So I don't see how, like, if you take him at 71 in that zone where he's ranked in a points league, I cannot fathom how that is going to work out positively for you. It's all about, like, we can say he's a dog and he's this key shooter and he's going to have so many opportunities. There's only so many shots that can go around, and he only had 18% usage last season before DeRozan came in. And whose shots is DeRozan taking? Like, he's not just slotting into Harrison Barnes' role. He's not. He's doing way more than that. So the player who is going to suffer, I think, is Keegan Murray offensively in terms of volume the most. I can't wrap my head around that happening a different way. Another guy that I do have as a top 120 player, only in points formats, but so let's include him here, that is Shaden Sharp. I don't really know what to make of Sharp. His last season was limited. I wouldn't say I was super impressed. There were some big games there when everybody was out. Early on in the season, there was a lot of injuries. But like overall, he lacks a little bit. I think he's probably around 10-ish points league guy, but more of an 11 to 12 category league player. He was 135th in -1 last season, 113th in points. Like, he could get top 100 points league. But Simon's there, Scooter's there, Grant is there, Avdi is there. One of Simon, Scoot, and Sharp is coming off the bench. I don't know who it is, but one of them is. And it's not Simon's. Would Avdia come off the bench? Probably not. So someone is missing out here. And that's a little bit worrying with him. Now, his ADP and rank are fine. 123 for Sharp on ranking and 125 on Yahoo for ADP. He averaged 16 points with 5 rebounds. He had 23 usage, shot 41 only. But that's another one. We talk about Jeremy Sohan's field goal rising, or even Jabari Smith's. If he became a 44, 45% shooter and hit 37 from 3, that would definitely help out Shaden Sharp, especially in category league valuations. But we know that he's got volume upside. And that's why we look at him as a category league later round flyer type. More of a stable points league player, I think, is probably the best way of viewing him. Very clearly that Walker Kessler was a bust last season. I was on the bust side of Walker Kessler last season, but not to the degree that it happened. I was very, very clear multiple times, do not take this guy in round 2. Do not take this guy in round 3. Round 5, I was okay with it, but he did not return that number. He was 104th in category leagues and 131st in points leagues. He is not a volume points league player. They still have John Collins there, who was the guy that was starting over him. Taylor Hendricks is probably starting next to Collins. Larry Markkinen is still there. I don't know what they're planning on doing with Kessler. I don't know what they're planning on, whether he's starting and playing 28 minutes a night or not. I don't know, but Will Hardy lost a lot of faith in him. I still think when we're talking about valuation of a player, that him in round 9 of a category league is fine. Round 10 to 11 of a points league is fine. He's ranked 111th on Yahoo with an ADP of 108, which seems about bang on. He averaged 8 and 8 last season. He still had 2.4 blocks, but 12 usage, 65 from the field and 60 from the line. And we detailed this guy extremely, a lot last season. That he is the guy in a category format where you get the big rebounds, you get the big blocks, you get the big field goal percentage with absolutely no assists, no steals, bad free throws, and low points. It's got to be really specific what you're looking for, and I don't think he's a high usage upside player or anything like that. But I do think we get a little bit more out of Walker Kessler this season than we got last season. And he is a better category league guy than points league guy. So round 9 again for categories, 10 to 11 for points. He's probably about the right spot. Even at this point, we don't know whether Walker Kessler is going to start or not. We just don't know. So that's the 9 guys that I look at as my third year players who are top 120 guys, draftable in most spots. Like I think Sohan's probably not a top 10 round category league player. Neither is Shaden. They're more 11 to 12, whereas the other guys are all top 10 round sort of guys. And then I've got a bunch of players, like another, 9 players who I think are worthy of at least considering pushing into your deeper leagues, 14 teamers, but more what are we doing around 11, 12, or 13, or 14 when we're going to take flyers on players? I think that's an important part, or that's exactly what we're going to do here, is just take a look at which of those guys I think are, as I just stumble over my words, worth considering. So the other guys I think we considered draftable in those later rounds as third-year players, Jaden Ivey, Dyson Daniels. If we hear that Dyson Daniels is starting, he probably moves into round 10 territory. Ivy, I just don't know what they're going to do. Tari Eason in Houston, no clear role for 25 minutes, but he's awesome for categories. Andy Nembhard's going to start, but he's a low per minute producer. Benedict Mathurin off the bench. I don't know if there's enough minutes there. Vince Williams in Memphis was awesome last season, but there's no clear starting role for him either. Now, GG Jackson did get hurt today with a broken foot. That is probably keeping him out till, let's say, at the best case, Christmas. It could be a 6-month season ender. Now, I don't think GG was going to play very much anyway. So the GG was out of the rotation. Jake LaRavia plays those minutes. I don't think it impacts Vince very much at all. Because, I don't think the GG was starting. And I don't think the GG was being the 6th man. I think Vince already had a bigger role. Vince is definitely more of a... I haven't really spoken about Vince Williams at all this offseason, so I want to just quickly talk about him. He's a much better category league player than a points league player. I'll put that graphic back up on the screen for you guys. Better points league, category league than points league guy. And if someone does go down, I think he'd be the first player to step up and start. And 30 minutes of Vince Williams is enough. I think he's going to be a really good NBA player, like a slightly taller DeAnthony Melton, also from a fantasy perspective, but at the moment, it's not quite there. Whereas like an Andrew Nembhard's a really good real-life player, not as good in fantasy. Jaden Ivey, I think he probably needs another team to really hit some of those ceiling outcomes. And then I do have 3 other names that I just want to quickly mention again. Could be draftable, more flyer, let's see what happens type scenario. Christian Brown in Denver probably is going to start in place of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They could start Russell Westbrook. I don't think they will. And I don't think they start Julian Strouder. And I definitely don't think they start Peyton Watson. People want them to start Peyton Watson, who is a 4 who plays backup 5. They need a 2. Even if Brown starts, Westbrook, I am certain, is going to share the court with Jamal Murray. So he will play some of those minutes. And Brown has been a bad permanent fantasy player. And I don't think that changes here. So he is one of those, you can take a flyer, not super into it. Little Chungus, Nikola Jovic in Miami. I am very certain that he will get first crack at starting next to Bam Adebayo, not Khalil Ware. Jovic still has some low usage problems. He was much better second half of the season, but overall his fantasy game lacks in a lot of areas. And the other one is Keegan Allen, who is a great defensive stat player for a guard. If he starts in Sacramento, the upside of him is a little capped because Kevin Huerter exists, DeMar DeRozan arrives. But if they do need to lean into him playing 30 minutes a night, because of his defensive ability, he might average 1.7 steals and he might average a block. He might have some games where he hits 4 threes and others where he goes 1 of 10. We saw that last year. But a lot of what Keon did last season was with either Fox out at the start of the year or Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk in the second half of the year. So I don't mind a flyer on him. I just think that he's going to be relatively limited in terms of his overall upside. What you aren't is limited for shows, because I'm doing a lot of them. So make sure, as we come to the end of this one, that you're subscribed on whatever platform it is that you so enjoy, and then you will never miss one, whether it's audio or it's video, or you are a true member of the DB squad and you double bang on both. That would be great. So that's your 3rd-year players done, dusted, out of the way. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.